Seafood is one of our last wild crops. Seafood is pulled from a dark and watery world, and it seems somehow unfamiliar and a little bit challenging. Now, all of us have eaten seafood. We probably know that it's good for us and think that we should be eating more of it, but I can almost guarantee you every one of us has eaten seafood that's expensive and was, quite frankly, a little bit fishy. So we're going to talk about buying seafood. The first rule of buying seafood is to stay flexible. When a fisherman goes out, what they bring back is really shaped by fate and a little bit of their skill. So, if you go out looking for swordfish and swordfish is not available, or there's just one piece left, there's a good chance that maybe it's still there for a good reason. Better by far that you should establish a relationship with a fishmonger. Get to know them, tell them what you like, tell them what you don't like, and take their recommendation. You can also take advantage of their services. So you can ask them to fillet a fish for you or gut a fish, make sure it's scaled, cut up into portions. All of that costs money, and you should expect to pay for it, but my experience is that it's money well spent. Let's take a look at some fish right here. Lined up here in front of us is some monkfish, which we'll cook. I've got a striped bass, a nice salmon, a snapper, a red snapper from Mexico, shrimp, and mussels. I'm going to pull this big fella up onto my cutting board, and let's see if we can decide what quality looks like in fish. The first thing that I would do is feel the outside of the fish. If it's slimy, that shouldn't be a problem. And it shouldn't be a problem because it's that slime that actually protects this fish and helps it slide through the water when it's alive. If it feels slimy but it smells bad, that's a very different kind of slime, and that's a problem. When we're talking about aroma, the first place that you'll start to notice off aroma is probably in the belly. So opening the belly and giving it a quick sniff is not a bad idea. So far, this fish looks very good. Back to the flesh. It should be firm, so when you press it, it should spring back. If you press it and a little indentation stays behind, that's not a good sign either. That's an older fish. The scales should be firmly attached. If you rub this backwards, if you rub it from the tail to the head and the scales come off, chances are this is an older fish. Look at the fins. And if they are dried out and broken and cracking, it could be indicative of a fish that's been mishandled or been out of the water for too long. If they're nice and moist and full, that looks good. Check the gills. The gills of the fish are where this fish breathes. Now, over time, the gills will go from a deep reddish or pink color to sort of a deep, dark, brickish red or even brown. And as they progress from pink and red to brown, you know that the fish is getting older and older. It's not uncommon that the gills will be taken out of the fish because they will spoil more quickly. But if the gills are missing, then you realize that a red flag should go up, and you should look at other indicators of quality to determine the age of this fish. Come on up here and we'll take a look at the eye of this fish. As eyes age, once the fish is dead and out of the water, they'll become a little bit cloudy. So a nice clear eye is indicative of a fish that is fresh. There's one final evaluation that I make of fish, and this was shared with me by a fishmonger. He said simply this, that when you look at a really fresh fish, it will have personality on its face and it will look vital on your cutting board. In effect, it will look surprised to be in your kitchen. He said an older fish has no personality, it doesn't look vital, it just looks like a dead fish. And if you take a look at this fish, I think you can get a sense that it has plenty of vitality in it to this day. All right, I'm going to move this back, and let's talk about some other things. Let's say that you don't buy whole fish, but that you're buying fillets of fish. Fillets of fish should be vital in color. They shouldn't be discolored. They should look fresh and moist. The flesh should not be torn. And if you have a chance to pick it up and smell it, it should be firm, just like this fish, and it should smell fresh and briny. If it smells bad, that's a problem. If the fishmonger doesn't want you to smell the fish, you might move on and find another fishmonger. All right, let's talk about freshness of fish. It's tremendously important, and there's a very good reason that fish spoils so quickly. Fish lives in salted water, and because it takes that salted water in, the makeup of the protein is very different. It has more protein. It also lives in a temperatured environment that is as cold as a refrigerator, if not even a little bit more cold than that, down close to freezing. So the enzymes and the bacteria that are inherent in this fish have learned how to work at cold temperatures. When you take a fish out of that cold environment and you put it into a refrigerator, it's as if it's on a balmy desert island somewhere. The bacteria start to grow very, very quickly. The enzymes begin to break the flesh down. So you need to keep fish really cold. And the easy way to do it, obviously, is to keep it on ice. When you go shopping for fish, make a point of buying your fish at the end, and if you can take a little cooler with you with some blue ice, that makes good sense. As a rule of thumb, every hour that a fish spends at room temperature has shortened its shelf life by an entire day. That's significant. So that beautiful red snapper, I took it into the kitchen and I filleted it, and here it is right here. When I smell it, it smells fresh and briny. There is no fishiness about this at all. One thing I'd like to mention, when I moved this fish onto the cutting board so that I could fillet it, I was very careful to hold it almost like a baby, a hand under each end. This fish spends its entire life bobbing around in water and never feels the effect of gravity. So the meat, the muscles, and the skeletal system are very different. If I'm too rough with it, the flesh can tear, the bones can pull apart. If I made the mistake of grabbing this fish by the tail and holding it up and wiggling it, I would feel the spine pull apart and I would know that the meat would be torn. All right, I'm going to take a piece of this fish. Because it's so beautiful and because it's so fresh, we're going to make this into ceviche. And with ceviche, freshness counts. So make sure that you evaluate the fish for freshness. Nice and vital, no fishy smell whatsoever. When you're making ceviche, we're going to cook this in acidity. The acidity we're going to be using is lime juice, and what will happen is the fish will turn opaque as soon as it gets into the lime juice, and then over the next 10 minutes or so, that opaque fish will carry on towards the center. The larger we cut this, the longer it will take to cook. And the longer this sits in lime juice, the more mealy the outside will become. So, as I'm cutting it up, what I'm going to suggest is that we cut it in thinner pieces. I'm cutting this probably a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch thick. And once I have all these slices cut, I'm going to line them up and cut them across so that they look about the size of a Scrabble tile. I think that's a good descriptor for what we're going to have here. This should take probably no more than about 10 minutes in lime juice. Let me just cut up a little bit more. A sharp knife is helpful. There we go, that should do it. I'm going to set that aside. We'll line these all up. And what I'd like to do is cut it into little Scrabble tiles. All right, I'm going to move the board out of the way. And I'm going to take and put this fish up here where we can see it a little bit better. And then I'm going to pour lime juice over the fish. We'll stir it real briefly and give it a chance to cook. I'm going to also season it with a little bit of salt right now. And while that's cooking in lime juice, I'm going to show you the fish that I've had in lime juice for about 20 minutes or a half an hour. You can see it's sort of shrunk up. It gives off a lot of liquid. And if I were to taste this, the texture is a little bit mealy. It sort of falls apart. I can press it apart with my tongue, and that's not what I want at all. So I'm thinking about 10 minutes is all we'll need to keep this in lime juice. While we're waiting, what I want to do is prepare the rest of this ceviche. Now, the right cut is important for ceviche. Obviously, fresh fish is important with ceviche. Depending on the flavor profile you're looking for, you might find a recipe that uses ingredients that are fairly simple and not very full flavored. I like it with full flavor. And so let me show you what I've got here. I'm going to take some onion and we'll add that. And then diced tomato. I've got some serrano peppers here, which can be very, very hot. So dice them up very small and add them to your taste. Don't go overboard until you're sure that you can tolerate that level of heat. Here are some briny green olives. These are Picholine olives. Stir those in. I want to have a little bit of cilantro for its bright citrusy flavor. Some richness that comes from avocado. And I'm going to add tomato juice to this as well. Just moisten it with tomato juice. Think of this almost like a little salad that's going to have the cooked fish in it. It's time to season it. I've got some dried oregano. This is Mexican oregano. It's really delicious. It reminds me of fresh marjoram, the Mexican oregano. I'm going to make sure that this is seasoned properly with salt as well. And then dress it with just a little bit of lime. Now, go easy because we've got a lot of lime juice on the fish already. And we'll taste this, see how we like it. Okay, the seasoning is good. I like the heat. I love the flavor of the olives, and I'm really looking forward to tasting that with the fish. If you look at the fish here, it's already starting to become opaque. With really good quality fish, I wouldn't worry at all, especially soaked in lime juice. I wouldn't worry at all about tasting it even after 5 minutes. That's delicious right now. If you make this for yourself, what I would recommend is take a couple of pieces of fish and leave them in the lime juice for too long, just so that you know what happens to it over time. But I think we can move ahead. So we've got the garniture separate from the fish. I want to leave all this water behind. Sometimes people would just build their ceviche right in this bowl, but this fish water and lime juice, I think, should stay behind. So I'm going to drain the fish and move it over.